Hey, and we're back. So this time we're going to go over all of the fighting scriptures. I remember in our very end of our second video on the first two, we talked about the vision of the evening and morning. Here's a definition to it. I kind of put together. It's light plus dark, coming and going in all points by mainly external battles that progressively lead to an external Armageddon because of the internal war between God and Lucifer. That's a lot to say, but basically we're going to get to, after I'm done with explaining the first four levels of the scales, because that's what this is. It's the first four levels, which is your foundation out of the scale of 1 to 7, what you learn. So once we're done with that foundation, I'm going to go into a backstory of what the whole happened in the entire timeline from beginning between God and Lucifer up to where we are today, including how the dark arts formed, where they came from, their root origins, back to where they were popular and where they are today. And the reason why that needs done is because right now, if you've been in the church at all, we have a big picture that the story is, well, you can't really be perfect till you die, go to heaven, and well, Jesus come to save you from hell, and we don't really know when God's doing this or that, maybe a curse or maybe tribulation or maybe teach us something, or we're all confused about that, and the doctrines that were changed were meant to do this. So most people give up and they kind of stop going to church because either it's too fake for them, or they play the church game, which is becoming like a potluck game or a pyramid scheme game. And so that's kind of where it's at. And people that still like spiritual things, they'll end up getting into other things they find truth in. Like they may get into like yoga and different spiritual dynamics from like New Age and stuff like that, just because they're still hungry and thirsty for God and they're trying to find those truths in other arenas. And those truths are in other arenas once you know, if you come back to the original doctrines, those truths that are out there in other things are actually in the original doctrines. They just have different ways of explaining them in other religions. But those religions are like, they got either, if they're pagan or whatever, they're not after the true God, but they have some true principles to them. That's what sells them. And some people have seen those things and gotten those truths and come back to Christianity and just try to walk as best as they can. And I see those people all the time on the internet. But moving forward, coming back to this, so light and dark, it can come and go, depending on, it's kind of like a pendulum system. We'll get into that in more detail, but it comes and goes, and it comes and goes in all points. That I'll explain in more detail what that means in all points. I'll come back to that. But mainly external battles, because you got to battle for light and dark. You got to fight for either darkness. You have to fight for darkness or fight for light. You got to choose which side you're going to be on. That progressively, and it's a progression, leads to an external Armageddon. And Armageddon is that battle, and we'll get into that too down here. So now we're getting into fight, contend, persuade, and dispute. These are things that Paul the Apostle did. So there is perverse disputings. I'll tell you a brief story. I was in a dispute the other day about whether Christians should contend or not. Well, we shouldn't get into those things because we're loving and this and that, right? There is perverse disputings, and there is extreme ways to get into strife because of envy and jealousy and different things like that. Those are evil contentions, but there are good contentions when you're fighting for truth. That's more like executing judgments, and you're trying to bring freedom and justice. That you can do. And that's where the righteous can be as bold as a lion, but meek as a lamb. So in fighting, contending, persuading, and disputing, there is an internal and an external. The internal is to convert, but also to defend from being subverted. These are dichotomies: to convert and subvert. To convert means to hear and see. To subvert means to go to sleep. You know, you're trying to turn someone out the way, right? And you're trying to turn someone in the way. So that means when you do this, now people have turned this into join my cult or join my religion, right? Where it becomes like a numbers game. That's the pyramid scheme side of things. I'm talking about the true intent of conversions where, no, we encounter God. You can experience His presence, and God, you can hear His voice and see His face. You can grow in that, and you can get closer to Him. And that's a true conversion. We'll get into that on the back side of this because I have all those synonymous terms written out for those things. So externally, when you fight though, you can remove and install. These are dichotomies too. That's install is called setup. That's the external setup. Okay, so you externally set up what we called on the last videos the right hand. When you set up the right hand of dominion. So this is where you remove someone from the seventh sphere of influence or anywhere in that scale because you're trying to contend with people that bring in dark, right? So you want to remove them and install light. That's an external battle here. Okay, so but you know you also have to, in that defending from being subverted, your subversion is their conversion, meaning that their conversion is they want to convert you to what's called the Westwood. They want to convert you to the dark side. They want to convert you to be like them. Like if you go to Hollywood, you're going to have to convert. If you want to be in there and get, they will teach you everything. Like you get the following, all stuff. I got fortunate and I learned from masters the stuff that's not in Hollywood. But this is everything that you learn in there. They mainly teach one side. It used to be you learn both sides. And it used to be in the church you learn both sides. But the secret arts are mainly pushed back in Hollywood. But now it's just so one-sided because they have an agenda. So, but coming back, so they want to convert you into that Westwood by the Babylonian dark arts. They want you to be like them. And so in that case, you have to learn how to fight to defend from that and help defend others from going down that path, right? So, and also the way that works is, what helps is to remove those people that are doing that and install some people. So a lot of this is very hard to beat until you understand that there are the kings of the east and kings of the earth. That's your Southwood and your Northwood. We went over that on our last video. You want to install the kings of the east, because when they're in these high places, they're in those positions, they have more influence. People tend to listen to athletes and stars and celebrities and people that are in positions of authority, right? So if you're a congressman, a senator, or even a professor or teacher, these are positions that, like, well, this person must be smart. Or a scientist, or, well, they're a scientist, they must know everything. Or a rocket scientist, they're smart, they're educated, they got a master's, bachelor's, PhD, so they must have the answers. So when you're in those places, you can really convert and subvert, and it's hard to beat. Not only that, it's hard to beat social proof, whether for the light or for the dark. So that's why taking over high places is the key to winning, and key to gather and scatter. So part of the battling process is to gather and to scatter. We talked about that's a day 3 operation, right? Which works by a flood and a way of a vineyard. That way of a vineyard right here is the way this works. This light and dark have to pass through the way of a vineyard in all points, or you can say through grapes, right? Your points are your grapes in the vine. So you'll see that reason why we use all these symbols, it'll make more sense when we get to the back side of this, is that in the secret arts, everything's written in synonymous terms and in symbols over and over and over and over, so you know that this entire thing, there had to be a creator, and it's his signature and his patterns repeated over and over and over again throughout the entire thing. So That's why I really like, that's why you'll see it on the back. So yeah, so the flood, we'll get into, you'll see that on the back too. The flood works by, so remember this, we're going to come back to that. Part of battling is to gather and scatter, which works by a way of a flood. So, and these are internal and external, as we said here. So I want to turn this around. So I might move my mic up a bit. So